Okay, so here is an example, as you can see, of where I don't think I got anywhere close to 40 out of 40, and I predict that probably I've made about 3, maybe even 4 mistakes here, which is one of my worst performances. It all started around question 15, to be honest. A little squirrel ran past there in the window, and I looked up. Oh, there's a squirrel, like the dog from Up, and then I was, oh, okay, where am I? And because I thought I had messed up questions 15, then I had this frustration for the rest of the exam. And of course 15 is only 1/3 of the way through. You've got another 25 answers to put down, so it's really not a good idea to be flustered from such an early stage. And you can see the mistakes that I make from being frustrated at such an early stage in the exam. But this is how the exam is, and it's a good learning opportunity, what you shouldn't do. So let's have a look at what we could have done better. Okay, so let's get started. So we're gonna go from the section where it says now turn to section 1.
Now turn to section 1.
And this is the opportunity for us to go and start looking at the paper.
Section 1.
Okay, now ears prick up, because this is where you activate your world knowledge. As soon as they say section 1, now turn to section 1, then you listen very carefully at what they say. And this is actually a mistake that I think I've made. So look what I do here.
You will hear a telephone conversation between a passenger and an official at the Land Transport Information Service at Toronto Airport.
Now, what I'm doing there is writing. Why? Why would you do that? Just listen extremely carefully. All you need to know is that it's a telephone conversation between a passenger and an official at the Land Transport Information Service in Toronto Airport, so Canada. Land transport, so obviously not planes. Instead, what I'm doing is writing this down. What is the reason for that? I think this was a big mistake, and I've been doing it. I've done it throughout the test, and it's just unnecessary. So rather, especially in this section here, rather just close your eyes, intensely concentrate, because this, in a way, is probably the most important part of the listening, because it gives you a chance to activate your schemata, activate your world knowledge. I know what a telephone is. I know what a conversation is. I know what a passenger is and an official. They're going to be giving me official information. And I know generally that Toronto is in Canada and it's in an airport. So if I have all this information, then I'm much more prepared to go into the exam than if I was going straight into this transport from the airport to Milton. Okay, so do not waste time writing this like I did.
First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5.
Okay, now so I'm writing here transport. Now, if I listened carefully instead of writing all that rubbish up there, I would know that this is all land transport. So there's no point writing that. But I did take a guess with the word taxi, because taxis tend to be more expensive. Cars, taxis, buses, and shuttle. This is this type of bus that takes you specifically from an airport to another part of a town. Usually they call it a shuttle. Maybe an airport, sometimes it's an airport shuttle goes from the airport to a big car park, maybe 5, 6, 7 kilometers away, where you can park your car at a lot cheaper rate. Okay, so again, wasting time here, but taxi, I think, if I remember correctly, was the right thing to write down.
You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Hello, this is land transport information at Toronto Airport.
Now, obviously, they're going to give us the example here. It's an enormous amount of time for you that you don't need to listen for, because if you've done this test before, you know exactly how the test works. This is for people who have never done an IELTS practice test before, and there's absolutely no need for you to listen here. But you can take full advantage of all the time given.
How may I help you?
Oh, good morning. I'm flying to Toronto Airport next week, and I need to get to a town called Milton. Could you tell me how I can get there?
Okay, so notice I'm doing these collocations, so a long journey is a strong collocation, direct to the terminal, bus terminal, I think I meant to write here, or do you need to book? Yes, need to book or reserve a seat or something like that.
Milton, did you say? Let me see. I think that's about 150 miles southwest of here. In fact, it's 147 miles to be exact. So it'll take you at least, say, 3 to 4 hours by road.
The distance from the airport to Milton is 147 miles, so 147 has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Again, this is a chance for you not to... It's going to be repeated. The first 12 or 15 seconds of this is just going to be repeated. There's no need to come back and check. You could easily go even to the next page for this, or spend more time thinking about these answers here.
Hello, this is land transport information at Toronto Airport. How may I help you?
Oh, good morning. I'm flying to Toronto Airport next week, and I need to get to a town called Milton. Could you tell me how I can get there?
Milton, did you say? Let me see. I think that's about 150 miles southwest of here. In fact, it's 147 miles to be exact. So it'll take you at least, say, 3 to 4 hours by road.
Wow, is it as far as that?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where you start listening. So all that time wasted, when you heard 147, then you come back and go, okay, I'm ready to listen for answer number 1.
Yes, I'm afraid so. But you have a number of options to get you there, and you can always rent a car right here at the airport, of course.
Right. Well, I don't really want to drive.
Okay, so I don't really want to drive myself, don't want to drive, same words, but he's used the word you can always rent a car. There's the word rent. To hire is the same meaning as to rent.
Myself, so I'd like more information about public transport.
Okay. In that case, the quickest and most comfortable is a cab, and of course there are always plenty available, but it'll cost you.
Okay, so in American and Canadian English, they don't use the word taxi. You might hear older people say taxi cab. That's the full name for it. But most people don't say the word taxi anymore, and they just say the word cab, C-A-B. So that's American English and Canadian English. Singaporean English, I think they also use the word cab. Okay, and he said it'll cost you. That's an idiom to mean it'll cost you. Means it's not cheap. And she actually ends up saying something like this: a kind of distance would be way beyond my budget. So way beyond my budget is a similar synonym to expensive. So you'll know exactly that he's talking about a cab.
You can also take a Greyhound bus, or there's an airport shuttle service to Milton.
I think for that kind of distance, a cab would be way beyond my budget. But the bus sounds okay. Can you tell me how much that would cost?
Sure. Let's see, that would be $15 one way, or $27.50 return. That's on the Greyhound.
Ah, that's quite cheap. Great. Whereabouts does it stop in Milton?
It goes directly from the airport here to the city center, and it's pretty fast. But you have to bear in mind that there is only one departure a day, so it depends what time your flight gets in.
Okay, so direct to the city centre, and it goes directly, so directly. Pretty easy, that one. Okay, let's go for the next one.
Ah, of course.
Oh, sorry, he's just talking about you have to bear in mind that there's only one departure a day, so it depends. Your flight, it depends what time your flight gets in. Oh, of course, hang on. We are due to get there at 11:30 p.m. and he says, oh, too bad, very American English. Sorry, it's another way to say, oh, unfortunately, the bus leaves at 3:45. So that's a long wait. Now, it's quite a wait. This structure, quieter, means long. It's quite a distance. It's anything with a noun here. It's quite a distance. It's quite a way, meaning long. So long wait and long distance, long journey.
Hang on. Oh, we're due to get there at 11:30 a.m.
Too bad. The bus leaves at 3:45, so you would have quite a wait, more than 4 hours.
Oh, I see. Well, what about the shuttle you mentioned?
Okay, that's the airport shuttle that will take you from the airport right to your hotel or private address. It's a door-to-door service, and it would suit you much better because there's one every 2 hours.
So how much does that cost?
Let's see. Yeah, that's $35.
Okay, it's $35. Right, so door to door, remember, this is a common question that comes up in the listening, this type of adjective plus noun structure. If there are more than a few adjectives, then they have got a hyphen between them. So a typical one is a 4-year-old car, for example. That is the adjective of the noun car. So if I've got 1, 2, 3 words in the adjective, I need to join the words together with a hyphen. Otherwise, it's considered to be an incorrect spelling. The only time that I don't use hyphens is if it's an adjective before it. So, for example, let me just clear all this rubbish out the way. An expertly crafted sculpture. That's an adverb because of the ly, and I do not put a hyphen between that. Notice there are also some adverbs that look like they don't look like adverbs, they look like adjectives. So fast talking robot, I don't know, something. Fast in this case is an adverb, even though it doesn't have ly. Also doesn't have a hyphen. But door to door, these are nouns plus a preposition in between, and then the noun itself. These nouns have converted to adjectives. You do need to have a hyphen between the words.
There's one way, $65 return, so I guess it's a bit more expensive than the Greyhound.
Oh, that doesn't sound too bad, especially if it'll take me straight to the hotel.
but you do need to reserve a seat.
Okay. Is it possible to make a
Okay.
booking right now?
So reserve a seat. I don't, you can't quite read it there, but no more than 3 words. There's a very important stuff to highlight as well, which I didn't do because I was wasting my time with this. Underline or highlight any words in the rubric. Rubric is the instructions that tell you how many words or numbers that you are allowed to use. So reserve a seat 1, 2, 3 would be acceptable.
Through you?
Sure.
Oh, so reserve, yes. Thought I'd forgotten.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10.
Okay. And so now I'm using this time to look at any possible, any other possible answers for this. Notice I'm not looking at A, B, and C. I'm only looking at the first part of the question so that these A, B, and C don't distract me. The good thing about this, however, look, they're very short
Now
answers.
listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
And short answers mean I can look at them quickly.
Okay, I just have to fill this form out for you. So, what date do you want to book this for?
The 16th of October. Oh, no. Sorry, that's my departure date. I arrive on the 17th, so book it for them, please.
Okay, so that's very typical. They'll say a date and then, oh, sorry, actually I meant. So be aware of that. Very typical of the IELTS exam.
So that's the Toronto Airport shuttle to Milton. And this is for just one person, or...?
Yeah, just me, please.
Right. And you said your expected time of arrival was 11:30? So if I book your shuttle for after 12, let's say 12:30, that should give you plenty of time to, collect your baggage, maybe grab a coffee.
Yeah, that sounds fine. As long...
Okay, yes. So 12:30, plenty of time to collect your baggage, as long as we land on time. That might be a trick, so that's why I was hesitating to write anything down until she said something. But he said, let's listen.
As long as we land on time.
Well, we'll take your flight details, so you don't need to worry too much about that.
Okay, so don't worry about that, and then you can be happy that 12:30 is the answer.
Now, what about the fare? What sort of ticket do you want? One way or...
Yeah, that'll be fine. Provided I can book the return trip once I'm there.
No problem. Just allow a
Okay, so one way, similar way to say single.
couple of days in advance to make sure you get a seat. And what is your name, please?
Janet Thompson.
Is that Thompson spelled with a P?
No, it's Thomson.
Okay, so Thompson, the English surname, is typically spelt with a P, but occasionally it's not. And this is often the case that they, with a surname, they write you might write something down, and then they say, oh, by the way, it's actually spelled this way. So be very aware that surnames that are not spelt in the usual way will be spelt out. So you need to know the alphabet. Obviously you do, but...
Okay. And you'll be coming from the UK? What flight will you be traveling on?
Oh, it's Air Canada flight number AC936 from London Heathrow.
Right. Now, do you know where you'll be staying? We need to give the driver an address.
Yes, it's called the Vacation Motel, and I think it's near the town centre. Anyway, the address is 24 Kitchener Street. That's Kitchener Street.
That's fine. Right, so that's $35 to pay, please. Have you got your credit card number there?
Sorry.
Yes, it's a Visa card, and the number is 3303 8450 2045 6837.
Okay. Well, that seems to be everything. Have a good trip.
Okay, so quite a long number. Fortunately, she didn't do any of these, 333, 333 type things, so she did at least say 3303. But it is a long number, and I mean, you should have been prepared for that because credit card numbers are 16 digits. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, and it is a Visa anyway. So as long as you were prepared to listen for 16 digits, then you shouldn't have had a problem with that.
And we'll see you in Toronto next week.
Yes, bye. Oh, thanks for your help.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Okay, and I'm using this time to obviously carry on looking for, giving myself time to look for possible answers before I listen. Okay, let's go straight to it.
You will hear a representative from a holiday company called PS Camping giving a talk about the holidays the
Okay, again, wasting time. Do
company
not
organises.
do that.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16.
Don't know why. I'm not even reading it again. It's just a waste of time. Okay, and we've got up to 16. I'm not sure if I spent enough time actually on that question. What's 16, 17, 18, 19 and 20. And I think that I should have spent a little bit more time on that. Okay, so let's go straight to this.
Thank you all for coming to my talk this evening. It's nice to see so many people in the audience. For those of you who don't know very much about PS Camping, let me start by giving you some background information about the company. The company started 25 years ago. It actually opened as a retail chain selling camping equipment, and then...
Okay, so typical distractor. 25 years ago, you see 25 years, great. But it's actually, and she's using the word actually. This is a honey Lexis that you need to listen out for, where they give you the actual answer. And they'll say a retail chain, it was a shop selling camping equipment. But then 20 years ago, let's listen.
20 years ago, it bought a small number of campsites in the UK and began offering camping holidays.
Okay,
The company grew
so
rapidly
that's where it started. Organising holidays,
and has been providing holidays in
camping holidays. Obviously, 20 years is the answer for that one.
continental Europe for the last 15 years. If you book a camping holiday with us, you'll have a choice of over 300 sites. In Italy, we now have some 64 sites that we either own or have exclusive use of. France is where we have the majority of sites.
Okay, so the majority. And you notice that I am, in this case, looking at the options. I'm not necessarily writing down the answers here like I might do with longer sentences, because the answers are so short. So in these cases, I can directly select the answers I think are correct.
And we currently have a project to expand into Switzerland. We also have a number of sites in
Okay, and we're going to expand into Switzerland, meaning we don't currently have any campsites in Switzerland, but we will be opening some up.
northern Spain, particularly in the mountainous region of Picos de Europa. We've upgraded all these Spanish sites and improved them considerably from their original 3-star rating. We believe our holidays offer superb facilities for the whole family.
Okay, whole family, so you're going to start. Often that phrase, the whole family, suggests there's something about children, so let's listen.
Parents who want their children to be fully occupied for all or part of the day can take advantage of our children's activities.
Okay, so parents who want their children to be fully occupied, so they're always doing something for all or part of the day, can take advantage of our children's activities. Okay, yes, so all or part of the day. Doesn't say about every day of the week, so let's listen some more.
These are organised by our well-qualified and enthusiastic staff. Each day kicks off...
Okay, there's your word, each day. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday kicks off with a sports match.
with a sports match.
Now notice this kicks off with kick. I mean, people who might not know, might not be very good at English might hear the word kick and football and assume that the answer is A. But the kick off in this case, to kick off, means starts. So each day starts with a sports match.
Perhaps football or volleyball.
Okay, so now they're giving examples. Perhaps is another way to say, for example, football or volleyball. Now, there's a possibility that Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays are football days, and then Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or whatever I said, or the other days are volleyball. So it cannot be football because it says every day, so football is out.
Followed by an hour of drama for everyone. This may include singing or dancing.
So 1 hour of drama for everybody, and there are some examples. This may include singing, dancing, mime, or other activities. So the only possible, well, let's listen a little bit more.
Mime or other activities. In the afternoon, there's a different art activity for each day of the week, including a poster competition or model making.
Okay, so there's the art activity, but they give examples, poster competition or model making. So it cannot be model making for the same reasons that it cannot be football, because there might also be poster competitions. So the answer for this one is drama.
What's more, our sites are truly child-friendly, and with this in mind, we operate a no-noise rule in the evenings. Children's evening activities usually finish at 9:30 or occasionally 10.
Okay, so children's activities finish at 9:30, sometimes 10. And so from 10:30...
And from 10:30, holidaymakers are expected to be quiet in the areas where there are tents.
Okay, so after 10:30, in the areas that there are some tents, you need to be quiet. So quiet, obviously the meaning of no noise. So instead of after, they use the word from. So from 10:30, holiday makers are expected to be quiet. Okay, let's listen for 15. This is when the squirrel came and distracted me, and this is where all the disaster started.
We want nothing to go wrong on a PS camping holiday, but if it does, we also want all our customers to be insured. If you haven't organised an annual insurance policy of your own, you'll need to take out the low-cost cover we offer, and we require that you arrange this when you make your holiday reservation.
We require that you make this when you make your holiday reservation. Now, I didn't listen to that because I was looking at an animal running past the window. And I can't even remember if I was lucky about putting the correct answer here. Let's check.
There are many advantages to choosing PS Camping and to recommending it to others. As a regular customer, you'll be kept informed of...
Okay, so I was lucky, but now you see that I'm already flustered because she's starting to talk about this already, and I've raised my stress levels by being distracted and not focusing on the task at hand. So focus on the task. This is a way to say live in the moment. Focus on the now. Focus on the now. Buddhist philosophy. So absolutely focus on what you're doing at this moment and don't let things worry you. And this is my mistake. So really from here on, it's not to do with my language level. It's my inability to focus on the task at hand. It's my focusing on the past. Oh, I stupidly probably made a mistake at 15. I'm so stupid. I messed up. And this is often what happens with students, is they don't focus on the now. They're not living in the moment. Living in the moment. And so this is where I make some of the worst mistakes from here on.
Special offers, and your friends can benefit from 10% off their holiday.
Okay, so I've just started listening now. Friends can benefit with, how does it say, 10% off their holiday. So I was lucky now. I sort of caught myself checking. I should have underlined this. Very important. Customers who recommend camping to friends will receive.
Or book a luxury tent for the price of a standard one.
Okay, so all of these are still talking about friends. If friends, if friends get recommended by you, then those friends will get a 10% discount or book a luxury tent for the price of one standard tent. So both of those are for friends, so it can only be.
In return, we'll send you a thank you present, which you can...
In return for recommending friends, we'll give you a thank you present. Thank you present. Notice that's also got hyphen. Thank you, there we go. It's because, remember, that's the noun, and this is functioning as an adjective. So I thank you with a dash in between present. Okay, so yeah, B and C are referring only to friends.
choose from a list of high-quality items.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20.
Okay. So I feel confident about that. This is a case, I think this one here as well, let me talk about that later. Let's just do this first.
Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
When it comes to our tents, these are equipped to the highest standard. We really do think of every essential...
Okay, so when it comes to something, which is another way to say is, say, I'm going to start talking about. In spoken English. And in written English sometimes, but usually spoken English, this is a phrase. I'm going to start talking about this. So now we're talking about tents. Not the central areas, not something that's available on request. So we're listening out for A in this case.
detail, from an oven and cooking rings fueled by bottled gas to mirrors in the bedroom areas.
Okay, so we're talking about ovens and cooking rings. Now, yes, I know that there are some barbecues that are powered by gas, but this is talking about ovens. You know, the side door you open and you can put a roast chicken inside, or you can bake a cake. And then cooking rings, this is like the stove on the top. You have to use a pot to cook on a cooking ring, a pot or a pan. So this is not talking about barbecues yet. We're going to listen. Maybe the word barbecue, I think the word barbecue does actually come up. Yes, here it is.
If you don't want to cook indoors, you can borrow a barbecue if you ask in advance for one to be...
Okay, listen to the intonation. You can borrow a barbecue if you ask for it in advance. You notice that intonation changes a whole octave down. Her tone of her voice changes because that's the answer. So remember that it's not just Honey Lexis that helps you to find where the answers might be, but intonation changes as well. So this is available on request if you ask in advance. So C is the answer for 17.
made available. And there's even a picnic blanket to sit on outside your tent. Inside, a box of games and toys can be found.
Okay, so remember we're still talking about tents. So inside she means inside the tent. A box of toys and games can be found. So 18 is?
And children's tents can be hired if required. All tents have a fridge. And if you want to spend the day on the beach, for example...
Okay, so all tents have a fridge. This is something that runs off electricity. However, a cool box is the box where you put ice or dry ice or something to keep the food inside it cold, or cool at least.
Ask for a specially designed PS Camping cool box, which will keep your food and drinks chilled.
Okay, and here it is. So ask for something, request something. Request and ask are synonyms, so this is C as well.
There are excellent washing facilities at all our sites, with washing machines and clothes lines in
Okay, so mops and buckets. A mop is the thing.
the central areas, along with
Okay, so a mop is a thing that it's got a little handle in it. It's like that, and you have a bucket with water in it and soap, and you put the mop in the bucket, and you can wash the floor with it. So it's talking about washing facilities, washing machines. So you can imagine that mops and buckets are going to be spoken about, and in fact,
mops and buckets, in case your tent needs cleaning during your stay.
now this one is a tricky one because it says there are, sorry, ARC should be E, there are excellent washing facilities in all our sites with washing machines and clotheslines in the central areas, along with, meaning and, mops and buckets in case your tent needs cleaning. So there's the answer with washing machines and clotheslines, but you have to listen after it to hear that it's also talking about mops and buckets. So this is another case of me a little bit hesitant to put down B, but I did do that eventually.
All sites have a cafe and or a shop for those who'd rather eat in than dine at a local restaurant.
That is
Okay. Yeah, so as you can see, I'm a bit hesitant with B simply because I wasn't focused. I wasn't concentrating. Anyway, I think I got the answer there.
the
Correct.
end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Okay, and you notice me, this is where I wanted to talk about. Now, this is an example of where your world knowledge can let you down. It's not just world knowledge, it's my interest. I'm not particularly interested in business, probably one of the reasons why I'm still not particularly wealthy, but I'm not particularly interested in business, and so even though I do have a general idea of this information, because I have a sort of mental block to this, I find it difficult to answer these questions, and you'll see that I think most of my mistakes come up in this part of the exam, and maybe I'm lucky and maybe I've chosen the correct answers, but I have a feeling that this is where I've made some mistakes, and it's got a lot to do with the fact that I'm not particularly interested in this topic, and that's what's difficult to get across to students. Even if you're not interested in a particular topic, if you want to get more than a 7.5, you need to show general interest in all sorts of possible topics and themes that might come up in the exam. And this is an example of why you need to do that, because if you don't, you're going to get stuck. Right, let's just go straight to it.
You will hear a tutor talking to 2 business students called Philip and Janice about their research on managing individuals. First, you have some time to look at questions.
Again, I think waste of time. I should have been closing my eyes, imagining that you're there. You're in this tutor's office. 2 students, maybe they're working together on a project. One is a boy and one is a girl called Philip and Janice. And they're in his office. He's a business tutor and he's asking them about, they're doing research. So you imagine that they've got some pieces of paper or at least a laptop or 2 between them, and they're telling him what they're going to do their report on, because they've done all this research and they're going to do a report. So if you can imagine yourself in that situation, there's a man and 2 of his students sitting there and they're talking about business and how to explain the research that they have done or what they plan to do with the research. Okay, and once you're in that situation, in that world in your mind, close your eyes and intensely imagine it. It makes your life a lot easier when it comes to the listening.
21 to 23.
Okay. And I'm not sure if enough time was spent looking at these carefully. I'm trying to rush ahead to section 4, I think.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 23.
Well, you've both been looking at different styles of managing individuals in companies and the workplace. How's the research going, Philip?
Well, I've been looking at why individualism, individual differences, are such an important area of management studies. When you think about any organisation, be it a family business or a multinational company, they're all fundamentally a group of people working together. But it's what these individuals contribute to their places of work that makes you realise how important they are. Of course, they bring different ideas, but
Okay, so there's a lot of what you'll find in section 3 and 4 in all of the exams, that there might be a lot of babbling, lots of talking that has no relevance to the question you're listening for. And this is, in a way, a chance for you to relax just a little bit, but it's also testing if you're going to be listening out for words. Like, luckily here, he's used the same word, ideas, but notions, he might have said the word notions, and a notion is a synonym for an idea, so it's tricky. You need to know when to start listening carefully. Anyway, so he's talking about this word, different ideas, and he's used exactly the same phrase, so that's quite nice for you.
it's also their attitudes and their experiences of learning. Diversity is important in these areas too.
So why do people behave so differently?
Okay, so it's also their attitudes and experiences of learning. Diversity is important in these areas too. Diversity meaning differences, diversity. So diversity is important in these areas. Now he's referring back to experiences of learning, which is learning experiences here, and back to different attitudes. And then we've got the word attitudes. Okay, so now we're listening for question 22.
From one another at work.
There are lots of reasons, but research has shown that a lot of it comes down to personality. And the other factor is gender. It's a well-known fact.
Okay, so gender, another word to say the sexes, so males and females. And let's listen what he says.
Fact that men and women do lots of things in different ways, and the workplace is no different.
Did you look at the effects of this variation on companies?
Yes, I did. On the positive side,
Okay, so advantage on the positive side. Diversity develops.
exposure to such diversity helps encourage creativity.
Okay, so helps, encourage, develops, and then we've got this word creativity. So all of this synonym. And that's why my Mastering Vocabulary course is the first course I brought up, because it focuses so much on collocations and synonyms, how words that are very similar in meaning, because that's the only way you're going to get a really high mark, is if you understand how collocations and synonyms work together.
Which is generally an asset to a company. But unfortunately, individual differences are also the root of conflict.
Okay, unfortunately, a negative thing, disadvantage, can be a root of conflict, and root is a synonym of cause. So a root of conflict, where it starts.
Conflict between staff, and they can lead to difficulties for management, which can sometimes be serious.
Okay. Now,
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 24 to 30.
let's go straight on to. So I'm using this time to look into this bit here. Let's just go straight.
Thanks, Philip. So now I guess the two main things to remember here are to identify individual talent and then to utilize it. So, Janice, you were looking at identifying different talents in workers. Do you think this is easy for managers to do?
Well, currently, teamwork is in fashion in the
Okay, so employers,
workplace. And in my opinion,
meaning managers, I think. Do you think this is easy for managers to do? I think that employers should encourage. Yeah, I think that's what she's trying to say, that employers and managers are one and the same. Currently, teamwork is in fashion in the workplace. And in my opinion, the importance of the individual is generally neglected. Interesting that she uses and instead of but, because it's actually a contrary. So I would more likely expect to hear, currently teamwork is in fashion in the workplace, but in my opinion, the importance of the individual is greatly neglected. Anyway.
the importance of the individual is generally neglected. What managers should be targeting is those employees
Should be, what they should be targeting, encouraging. What they should be targeting is those employees, so employees, workers, synonym, who can take lead in a situation and are not afraid to accept the idea of responsibility. So take the lead, as you can see, is encourage workers who are potential leaders. Because that's what most people think is good. Teamwork is in fashion, but she thinks the individualism is neglected, and she wants employers to encourage employees. She wants managers to encourage workers to be leaders. So A for this one.
who can take the lead in a situation and are not afraid to accept the idea of responsibility.
That's true, Janice, but unfortunately many managers think the entire notion of encouraging individuality amongst their staff is far too hard.
Yes.
It's far too hard, synonym for difficult. Managers may find it hard to, so let me see what he says here. Many managers think the notion of encouraging individuality is too hard. And she says, yes, that is true. But
Yes, that may be true, but I think one of the most important tasks of managers is to consider the needs of the individual on one hand.
So the needs of the individual. In this case, an individual is a person, by the way, you know that. So the needs of the person or the individual on one hand. Let's put a hand here, and
group cooperation and conformity on the other.
And on the other hand, group conformity. What did I write? I think this is balance, because there's two different things. Deal with uncompetent, form successful groups. What did I write? I can't remember.
It requires creative thinking on the part of management to avoid tension.
So, Janice, what kind of people do you think companies should be looking for?
Well, it has to start from the very beginning, when companies are looking for new employees. When the personnel department...
Because I think it's B. But I didn't circle it yet. Okay, again, not paying enough attention.
is choosing between applicants, they need to look for someone who's broken the mould and can think for themselves.
Broken the mould. M-O-L-D. Now, this is an idiom to somebody. A mould is, let's say, for example, if you're making a whole lot of copies of a pot, maybe it's a plastic cup, let's say. Then you have a mould made of metal that's very hot, and you pour the plastic into the mold, and then when the metal cools, you take the mold away, and you're left with this perfect reproduction of the original cup. So you just repeat the same process over and over again, so you have the exact same shape of plastic cup because you're using the same mold. Now, if you break the mold, it means you become an individual. You behave differently to others. People who can think for themselves. Okay, so when it's choosing somebody, they need to look for someone who's broken the mold, who can think for themselves. Instead, people making these decisions often use a range of psychological tests to see if a person is a problem solver or will do as they're told. I'm not convinced these qualities are actually the most important. Ooh, this is a tricky one. Let's listen.
Instead, people making these decisions often use a range of psychological tests to see if a person is a problem solver or will do as they're told. I'm not convinced these qualities are actually the most important.
So do you think being a good team player is overrated?
Should look for applicants who are... This is a long question, so... No, it's not overrated. You do need to learn the rules and learn them fast. No individual can get around this if you're working in an organization. So how should managers deal with this? Rewards. Okay, that's getting on to question 27. So employers should look for job applicants who can think independently, who can solve problems. I've selected A, which is this idea of breaking the mold. So when they need to look for someone who's broken the mold. So this word need to, as in should, sorry. They need to look for someone who's broken the mold. Instead, oh, okay, I see. So instead, people who usually do this are looking at these other things. And if we're looking at just what Janice believes, not what actually happens. So the answer then, yes, is A. I think we'll double check the correct answers right at the end, the official answers. But I'm sure that it's 26A because she's mentioned these breaking the mold and she uses the word need over here, and she says instead this is what usually happens. So we're not talking about this and we're not talking about that. Okay, let's carry on down to I'm not convinced these qualities are actually most important.
I'm not convinced these qualities are actually the most important.
So do you think being a good team player is overrated?
No, it's not overrated. You do need to learn the rules and learn them fast. No individual can get around this if you're working in an organisation.
So how should managers deal with this?
Okay, so managers should, how should they deal with this? Managers should, so we've got this word rewards.
Rewards. When an individual demonstrates the behaviour the organisation expects, some kind of incentive can be given. What's
Okay, there's the word incentive, rewards, reward, incentive. So I think I selected C here.
important here is that this happens right at the beginning, so new recruits learn the rules of the system immediately.
What's important about this is that it happens right at the beginning. So new recruits learn the rules of the system immediately, right at the beginning of the employment term. New recruits, new employees. Let's see, what did I write here?
Also, the incentive should be something the individual actually wants, and this isn't always just money.
Ooh, okay, so there's the word financial related to the word money. So this isn't always just money. The rewards could be more time to spend on holiday, or shorter working hours, or being able to work from home. These sort of things are rewards as well. They're not just about money. So I don't think it's C actually.
To come back to you, Philip, you were saying that recognition of good performers is essential. Now, what else should managers be looking for?
Okay, so again, a case of not listening carefully. And I think, if we go back to here, She spoke about it's important to encourage. When an individual demonstrates the behavior that the organization expects, some kind of incentive can be given. So if somebody follows the rules, then they will be given a reward. So demonstrates the behavior of the organization expects, follows the rules. But the answer is here. What's important here is this happens right at the beginning. Encourage cooperation early on. Cooperation in this case, following the rules of the company early on. So I think the answer is actually not C, but B. So mistake there. And 25, we haven't highlighted that yet. Let's see if I don't think I even go back and select it. Which is that would be when you transfer your questions over to your answer sheet. That is where you would notice this. Hopefully. Okay. Anyway, let's continue with this.
Well, managing people means you not only have an understanding of your employees, but you also recognise the culture of the organisation. In fact, for some organisations, creativity and individuality may be the last thing they want to see during working hours.
Very true.
Yes, but managing people...
Okay, so all managers need to understand their employees and recognise their company's culture. Managing people means that you not only have an understanding of your employees, but you also recognise the culture of the organisation. Yes, okay.
Isn't as easy as it looks. For example, change in the workplace can be quite tricky, especially if there's a need to increase profit. And at times...
Need to increasing the company's profit. And at times like these, managers may have to give priority, more important, priority to profit rather than individual staff needs. So staff needs, employee satisfaction, so we need to say profit here. Profit here. Oh no, I'm going to write that in. I'm pretty sure I wrote that in.
Like these, managers may have to give priority to profit rather than individual staff needs.
Yes, and that creates difficult situations for people.
Yes. But what's important is that managers are able to deal with quite high levels.
Deal with, meaning cope. Deal with, sorry. So managers are able to deal with high levels of personal stress, increased amounts of stress, yeah.
Of personal stress. During times of change, they should be thinking not only about the strain...
So I've made a mistake. You can see one word only. I've even underlined that and I've written personal stress. The only word I should have written there is stress.
...on their staff, but take time out to think of themselves.
Absolutely. So
how frustrating. 0 points for not reading the rubric properly. Okay. All information about what you shouldn't do.
what are the implications of that?
Okay, now we go on to section 4.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Okay, and this is something that interests me, rock art. I've been to this country, but because of all the frustrations of the previous section, I'm not really in the right frame of mind. I'm not in the right frame of mind, so I'm not focused on this as much as I should be, as much as I can be, because I'm still worrying stupidly about the mistakes I know that I have made in the previous section or sections. Okay, let's go straight to this.
You will hear part of a lecture about cave paintings and other types of rock art.
Waste of time. I should have been looking at
First, you
this.
have some time to look at questions 31 to 40.
Annoying. So, yes, section 4. What you'll notice is section 1, 2, and 3, usually, not always, but most of the time, there is a break between the first and the second part of the talk. But in section 4, there is not. And you've got, as you can see, this goes from, I think there's at least 9 questions here that you need to fill in without any break.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the first seminar in preparation for our archaeological fieldwork in Namibia. We are fantastically lucky to have received partial research funding for this trip from our institute, so I shall expect 200% attention and participation from you all.
Okay, as I said, in section 3 and 4, there's often a lot of babble,
First in this seminar,
B-A-B-B-L-E, which is just talking for no apparent reason. What I'm underlining for some reason, Namibia, I can see I'm underlining it a number of times, but I should be looking at this word, a fieldwork trip. And I might not hear the word exactly, but it means going to a place and doing research face-to-face, or what do we say, primary research. So instead of looking at books and going to libraries, you go to do primary research. So I should have been focusing on this. Instead, I'm for some reason wasting time underlining the word Namibia.
I'm going to give a brief introduction to contemporary research on rock art. And in the second part, I'm going to give you some do's and don'ts for our fieldwork trip in April. So,
okay, there it is. And I missed it. So he's going to talk about the first, what is it? In the first part, I'll give you some brief introduction to contemporary. Contemporary means current or at the moment. So current research on rock art. And the second part, I'm going to that should be a T, give you some do's and don'ts for our fieldwork trip in April. And so I don't think I write anything there because I wasn't focusing on the important word, field trip.
Please
Fieldwork
listen
trip.
very carefully. I'm first going to focus on the interpretation of rock art.
Okay, so that should be April. And now I'm wasting time looking around, wondering where on earth. So annoying.
In Namibia. We are very fortunate to be going to an area where you can find some of the most important sites in the entire world. And I hope to show you how easy it is for everyone to make mistakes in looking at cultures which are different from our own. The first and most important lesson we have to learn. In Namibia, there are both paintings and engravings. That's where the surface of the rock is cut out. Many of the engravings show footprints of animals, and most scholars used to think that the purpose of these was simple and obvious. This rock art was like a school book with
Most scholars used to think, remember that's a way of saying a past, a habit that is no longer true now, or a long-lasting state that is no longer true. So earliest explanations of engravings, so it's related to used to and earliest. And notice it's not used to here. They were used to do something. It's not the same as I used to believe. So the engravings were used to help what?
with pictures to teach children about tracks.
So teach relates
Which track belonged to
teach relates to learn. So help children to learn.
which animal, giraffe, lion, and so on. But there were some mysteries. First, When you look at a typical Namibian painting or engraving, you see the tracks are repeated. There are dozens of tracks for the same animal. Well, you'd expect just one clear illustration if the reason, the aim was to teach tracking. Now, there were two more problems. Why are some of the engravings of animals very accurate, as you'd expect, all clearly identifiable, and
Accurate. So accurate meaning realistic, and others unrealistic.
others quite unrealistic?
Okay, so now we're listening for the second, or the third, really. 0, 1, 2.
And another mystery. Some of these unrealistic animals, that's in the engravings, seem to be half human. Some, for example, have got human faces. Many researchers now think that these were pictures.
Some, for example, have human faces. Sometimes. So sometimes.
As the wise men engraved of themselves. They believed they could use magic to control the animals they had drawn.
They believed they could use magic to control the animals. So wise men may have been trying to control wild animals with magic. Check the spelling of magic.
The hunters could then catch them for food. This shows you some of the dangers of coming from one culture to another, as we'll be doing, without understanding it fully.
So coming from one culture to another without understanding it fully. So maybe they studied rock art in France and thought, okay, well, they did that in France, so they're probably doing that in Namibia, even though they're 10,000 kilometers apart. So overgeneralizing, the dangers of coming from one culture to another. Okay, anyway, let's listen.
Scholars imagined that children looked at rock art pictures to learn to track, just because they themselves had learnt skills from pictures. Many researchers now believe that rock art had a much more complex purpose, and we'll talk more about it next week.
Okay, now this is the second part.
Now, before I invite you to join in a discussion in this second part of the seminar, I'd like to make some very important points about our fieldwork, and in fact any field trip to look at rock art. We're going to a number of sites, and we won't always be together. The single largest problem faced by people who manage the sites is, yes, I'm sure you've guessed, damage caused by visitors.
Okay, so here we finally got the word visitor pressure, visitors, damage caused by, even though it's usually unintentional. You don't do it on purpose. You might, by mistake, damage something.
Though it's usually unintentional. Whenever you do go to a site, don't forget you can learn many things from observing at a distance, instead of walking all over.
So look at a site from a distance, observe at a distance, from and at.
It. This can really help to reduce visitor pressure.
Okay, and you're lucky it's got the exact same phrase there. So this collocation, to observe something at a distance or from a distance, you get the general meaning.
People often say, well, there's only two of us, and just this one time. But maybe thousands of people are saying the same thing. And then some basic rules to guide you. We'll have our own camp near a village, but remember never to camp on a site if you go on your own. It may be disrespectful to the people of that culture.
Never to camp on a site if you go on your own. We'll have our own camp near a village, but remember never to camp on a site. Okay, so what he means by this is if you do another field work trip by yourself and not part of this group, then be aware that don't camp in the site because it might be special or holy to the people of the area. So people from that culture, it might be disrespectful from people to people of that culture.
And certainly don't make fires, however romantic it may seem. It's really dangerous in dry areas, and you can easily burn priceless undiscovered material by doing so.
Okay, now this one is a bit tricky because the word fires is the answer for number 37, but you have to wait all the way until it says something about undiscovered material, which is the same thing here, by doing so. When we do the Mastering Grammar, the IELTS Mastering Grammar course, I'll be talking about how this so works here.
So, how are we going to...
By doing so. So refers back to a verb, or a verb phrase. In this case it is making fires. So making fires can... Don't make fires. You can burn undiscovered material by doing so. Now, I was lucky there. I didn't really hear it. I just know he was talking about burning stuff, so I put in the word fires. Damaged by fire is a strong connotation.
Enjoy the rock art on our field trip by looking at it, drawing it, and photographing it. Never by touching it or even tracing it.
So never by touching it or tracing it. Avoid, it's even stronger than... Avoid is not as strong as never. But, yeah, the only possible answer here is touching.
Rock art is fragile and precious.
Okay, so notice also avoid is a word, a verb that has to take the ing form of the following verb. So avoid doing something.
Remember that climbing on rocks and in caves can destroy in a moment what has lasted for centuries. So no heroics in Namibia, please. Try to be extra careful and help others to be too. Oh, and lastly, please don't even move rocks or branches to take photographs.
Don't even move rocks. So even the most natural things, you need to leave them where they are. Leave the site.
You should leave the site intact. I'm sure I can rely on you to do that.
Okay, intact means without disturbing it in the same way that it was when you found it.
Well, that's about all I want to say before today's first discussion. But if you have any questions, please ask them now. Oh, and don't forget you'll find some fascinating information about worldwide sites on the internet. Right, first question then.
Okay, and so...
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
This is where I just I'd make a guess. Always just guess if you don't know. Never leave a blank space. Anyway, I think that's it, and let's see if I actually circle this.
That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet.
Okay, so I don't even check. Let's assume that I would have moved that across in the transferring section and I would have put the correct answer. But as you can see, a few mistakes there, a lot of them related to silly mistakes, not English language mistakes. Okay, so I hope that was useful for you. You can see that there was a little bit of luck involved with me getting some of those answers, but I hope that you could learn from the mistakes that I made, as well as take on board any of the techniques that you thought worked well. And join me for the next test in the next section, where we'll be looking at book number 7, test number 2.